Have you ever felt like your mind just won't shut off? Excessive thoughts, recurring worries, scenes replaying without invitation. You try to relax, but something inside remains restless. Your body begs for rest, but your mind doesn't listen. Overthinking feels useful, but it's like running in circles without moving forward. You get tired but go nowhere. And the worst part is, we get used to this internal noise, believing it's normal to live this way. But what if it isn't? What if there's a lighter way to exist within yourself? Stoicism doesn't teach you to silence the mind. It teaches you to make space for what matters, to discern what deserves your attention and what needs to be released. Because clarity doesn't come from effort, it comes from presence. In this video, you'll learn 10 simple strategies to detox your mind and stop overthinking. No magic formulas, just awareness and practice. Before we start, write this in the comments. Today, I choose clarity, calm, and balance. Because sometimes, what you need most isn't to think better, it's to think less. But before we dive in, listen closely to this story. It will help you understand, in a simple yet profound way, the power of letting go of what overloads your mind. In a village at the edge of the hills, lived a young man named Elias. He was known for his sharp mind, always with a quick answer, always predicting scenarios, always analyzing everything around him. But inside, he was exhausted. Elias thought so much that he forgot how to feel. Before sleeping, he would replay the day in detail. Upon waking, he would already be calculating possible mistakes. He carried the weight of 1,000 worries, as if thinking more would protect him from everything. One day, the village elder, a silent craftsman, invited him for a walk to the top of the hills. They walked in silence. From up high, overlooking the valley, the elder said, "Look at this field. It only blooms after winter. The earth needs to pause before bearing fruit. The mind does too." Elias stayed silent, for the first time without an answer. The elder continued, "Thinking is necessary, but overthinking is like digging wells where there is no thirst. You don't need to predict everything. You only need to be present." That day, Elias didn't come down from the hills wiser, but lighter, with fewer certainties, but more space inside himself. The moral of the story: what you need isn't always more thinking. Sometimes what you need is a pause. Number 1. Choose carefully where you place your attention. Have you ever felt like your mind is dragging you along? Like a boat adrift in the open sea, no rudder, no direction, at the mercy of the waves of thought. They come out of nowhere, multiply, mix, and when you try to silence them, they seem to scream louder. It's a constant internal noise, an invisible pressure that wears you down, even when the world around you is silent. What most people don't realize, because no one taught us, is that the problem isn't the number of thoughts, but the amount of attention we give them. Overthinking is a symptom of ungoverned focus. The mind, like a wild horse, needs firm reins. If you let it run loose, it will take you places you never meant to go. But if you learn to guide it, you can navigate even the roughest landscapes with steadiness and clarity. This is where a fundamental lesson from Stoicism comes in. You don't need to fight your thoughts to have peace. You just need to learn to redirect your attention. Epictetus got straight to the point when he wrote, "No person is free who is not master of themselves." And being master of yourself starts there, by being the guardian of your own attention. Imagine your mind as a house with many windows. In each window, an image is projected, a painful memory, a worry about the future, a judgment, a comparison, a desire. You can't stop these images from appearing, but you can choose which ones you look at, and for how long. You can even close some windows if you want to. Inner freedom isn't the absence of thoughts, it's the autonomy not to be ruled by them. From the moment you realize you don't have to give an audience to every thought that passes by, something changes within you. Your mind begins to calm, not because it's empty, but because you've stopped feeding it what harms you. When you notice yourself sinking into repetitive thoughts, like a broken record, take a deep breath, feel your body, bring your attention back to the now, look around, feel the ground, reconnect your senses to reality. Because most of the time, overthinking is just losing yourself in places where life isn't happening. Life isn't in the what ifs or the why did it happen. Life happens in what you do with the now, and the now can only be accessed through attention. When you focus on the present, your thoughts lose volume. The mind doesn't vanish, but it finds a new position. There's a practice that can help. Every time an intrusive thought arises, ask yourself, does this thought serve me or sabotage me? If it serves, observe it gently. If it sabotages, let it go. Don't fight it. Just say to yourself, "You're not useful to me right now." Then redirect your focus to something real, tangible, concrete, a book, a task, a deep breath. Over time, this becomes a habit. Your mind becomes disciplined, your thoughts lose strength, you gain lightness. Mastering your attention is the simplest and deepest way to begin mental detox. And the most beautiful part? That power is already within you. You just need to remember it, again and again, until it feels natural. Because in the end, true freedom is this: consciously choosing where your inner gaze rests, and from there, allowing to grow only what deserves to flourish. Have you ever stopped to listen to the tone of the voices inside your head? Are they calming you or sabotaging you? When no one's around and everything goes silent, what does your mind whisper? Because it's in that raw and intimate moment that you begin to realize whether you're truly living in peace or just pretending to be balanced. The truth is simple, though often forgotten. Your thoughts build the world you see, and what you see shapes what you feel. A chaotic mind creates a chaotic life, even if, on the outside, everything seems in order. You may have stability, comfort, even success, but if the thoughts that inhabit you are gray, your soul becomes a winter that never ends. Marcus Aurelius wrote with precision, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." What does that mean in practice? It means that thinking clearly is as essential as breathing, that feeding your mind words of fear, comparison, or judgment is like slowly poisoning yourself, one sip at a time, every single day. The problem is, you get used to it. You get used to waking up already worried, to going to sleep already drained, to constantly thinking about what could go wrong, what's missing, what others have. And without noticing, that mental noise becomes the background music of your existence, a sound that won't let you relax, that never turns off, that convinces you you're always behind, always lacking, always owing something to someone. But there is a way out, and that way begins with something almost subversive. Observe what you think, not to control every thought. That's impossible, but to choose which ones you let in, which ones you welcome to your table, and which ones you simply let pass. The quality of your thoughts is like the quality of the air you breathe. You can try to ignore it, but it still affects you. If it's polluted, your vitality fades, your clarity dims. But if it's clean, every breath becomes lightness, and you begin to live with more space inside you. Want a practical example? When something frustrates you, you might think, "This always happens to me." And that thought creates a sense of helplessness, which breeds more frustration, and the cycle repeats. But if instead you think, "This is uncomfortable, but it's a chance to respond differently," your body reacts with a different kind of energy. You don't deny the pain, but you also don't surrender to it. You choose the thought that sustains your presence. That's where Stoicism finds its strength. It doesn't ask you to be cold or indifferent. It asks you to be selective, not with the world, but with what you allow inside yourself. Your mind is a temple, not a trash bin for emotional debris. And the more you cleanse that space, the more you realize how heavy it was to carry things that were never yours. So if you want to stop overthinking, start by cleaning the quality of your thoughts. Write, observe, question, replace internal words like failure, guilt, shame with learning, responsibility, growth, not as an escape, but as a rebuilding of the foundation through which you interpret your life. Remember, every emotion is born from a thought, and every thought is a choice, conscious or not. From now on, let your choices be calmer, more compassionate, more honest, true to who you really want to become. Because your peace doesn't lie in the silence of the mind, but in the harmony of what you cultivate within it. Maybe you remember a seemingly ordinary day that fell apart completely because of a single sharp word, a strange look, or a veiled critique. Sometimes it's just a misunderstood gesture. And that's it. Your heart races, your mind spins, and the day darkens from the inside out. And why? Because of something someone said or did? Or simply because your mind decided to interpret it as a threat, when perhaps it was just the wind? But what if I told you that most of the things that hurt you don't have that power by themselves? That they only affect you because on some level you allowed it? Epictetus left no room for doubt when he wrote, "Man is not disturbed by things, but by the views he takes of them." And this is one of the most difficult and most liberating lessons of Stoicism. You do not suffer because of what happens. You suffer because of the story you tell yourself about what happens. This is not about denying emotions, pretending nothing affects you, or becoming numb. It's about understanding that there is a space, however small, between what happens and how you respond to it. And that space is where your freedom lives. What you do with that space determines whether your day remains light or gets dragged down by something that perhaps never deserved that much weight to begin with. Have you ever noticed how the same situation can trigger completely different reactions in different people? A criticism that paralyzes one may motivate another. A breakup that sinks one may free the other. The fact is the same. What changes is the lens, the story, the opinion. And here's the hard truth. If you often feel deeply affected by others, it's probably because you carry unhealed wounds within, insecurities that, without realizing it, go around searching for validation of your worth. And any gesture, word, or silence can be interpreted as rejection, as failure, as personal attack. But that says more about how you see yourself than about reality. Mental detox begins by letting go of the need to validate every emotion as absolute truth. Not every thought is reliable. Not every emotion is fair. And above all, not every pain is proportional to its cause. Next time something gets to you, pause and ask, is this situation truly serious? Or is it just my interpretation making it unbearable? That one pause may be the antidote to an emotional avalanche. This also applies to conflict. Sometimes you insist on winning arguments that didn't even need to happen. You respond to provocations just to prove a point. But the truth is, responding isn't always a sign of strength. Sometimes the real power lies in not reacting, in looking within and realizing your peace is worth more than your pride. When you understand that, you begin to choose your battles with greater wisdom. You stop spending your energy on what you can't control and start taking better care of what truly matters. Your clarity, your calm, your integrity. Free yourself from the belief that everything that hurts you is the world's fault. Not everything that wounds is intentional, and even when it is, you still have the power to decide, does this deserve to knock me down? Does this deserve my energy? Most of the time the answer will be no. Your opinion of things is the filter through which everything passes. And that filter may be clogged with old traumas, inherited insecurities, unrealistic expectations. Cleaning it is daily work, but it's also the clearest path to a light, resilient, and free mind. Because in the end, what truly disturbs you isn't the world, it's the way you've learned to see it. And the good news is, you can learn to see differently, starting now. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by things you don't even know why you're doing? A calendar full of commitments that don't nourish you. A fast-paced routine that leaves you exhausted, a constant pursuit of more answers, more control, more certainty. We live in a world where excess is disguised as progress and complexity has become synonymous with importance. But what is this costing you? The human mind was not built to digest so much at once, and every extra stimulus steals a bit of your presence, your clarity, your peace. It's as if we're trying to drink from a fountain overflowing with mud. The more we take in, the less clearly we can see. And here's the Stoic proposal. Return to the essential, because in the essential lies stillness. Musonius Rufus, one of the great Stoic masters, wrote, "The closer we are to nature, the farther we are from anxiety." This isn't just an ecological suggestion, it's an existential lesson. Returning to nature also means returning to your nature, to what is simple, to what is true. When you reconnect with what matters, an honest gesture, a deep breath, an unhurried walk, you start to realize how intoxicated you've been with distractions. Too much information, too many tasks, too many expectations. All of this acts like a thick cloud over your mind, blocking you from seeing clearly what you feel and what you need. That's why so often you feel tired, without having done anything physically exhausting, because the exhaustion doesn't just come from your body. It comes mainly from the buildup of thoughts that lead nowhere, from too many decisions that aren't even yours, from the pressure to be everything to everyone, all the time. Returning to the essential is, therefore, an act of rebellion against the culture of excess. It's saying no to what distracts you, even when everyone else says yes. It's silencing the noise of comparison, of compulsive productivity, of external validation. It's looking inward and asking with honesty, what is truly indispensable to me? What actually makes sense? And here comes the hardest part, letting go. Letting go of what takes up space, but doesn't fill you, of what seems important but is just noise. That takes courage, because the essential doesn't scream, doesn't demand, doesn't impose itself. The essential is subtle, and that's why it's so easy to ignore. But once you find it again, everything changes. The world stays the same. Your routine might even look similar, but you start inhabiting your life differently. You begin to breathe slower, speak with more intention, feel time passing, instead of just watching it slip away. And if you want a practical path, start here. Choose one moment of stillness every day. 5 minutes of silence. One task done without distractions. One room in your house without useless objects. One meal or conversation without your phone nearby. Not because it's pretty, but because it's necessary. Because excess doesn't go away on its own. It needs to be interrupted. Mental detox doesn't happen only inside the mind. It begins with the choices you make outside of it. What you consume, what you tolerate, what you believe is essential. And when you discover that you need much less than you thought, a new kind of freedom is born. The freedom of no longer carrying what was never yours to begin with. In the end, you don't need more stimulation. You need more space. And the essential, it always fits within the silence. Have you noticed that more often than not? It's not what happens in the world that wears you out, but what you allow into your mind without a filter. The notification that changes your mood, the comparison that knocks you down, the flood of voices telling you who you should be, what you should have, how you should live. The result is a fatigue that doesn't come from your body, but from your soul. It's no exaggeration to say we live in an age of mental intoxication, not from a lack of options, but from too many stimuli. Everything blinks, demands, calls out, and fights for your attention as if your mind were a public square where anyone can shout. And the problem is, without realizing it, you've been letting those voices in, and what enters, shapes. What shapes, remains. Ariston of Chios warned us with timeless clarity. Only those who desire more than they need are truly poor. And what is this unmeasured desire, if not a direct reflection of what we consume unconsciously? When you feed your mind with excess, it begins to believe it is always lacking. That's where anxiety is born, not from reality, but from the illusion that you should be somewhere else, be someone else, live another story. Everything you contemplate becomes part of who you are. If you spend hours watching perfect lives on social media, you begin to think your life is insufficient. If you constantly hear complaints and judgment, your mind becomes critical and negative. If you're surrounded by shallowness, your thoughts weaken. It's inevitable, but the opposite is also true. If you contemplate silence, you begin to hear your own inner voice. If you read something that expands you, your vision broadens. If you expose yourself to beauty, in music, in landscapes, in acts of kindness, your heart begins to remember that there's a lighter rhythm to live by. Detoxing the mind starts there, by limiting access. Like a wise host who doesn't open their door to just anyone, you can't control everything that happens outside, but you can decide what gets in. This goes beyond discipline. It's about self-respect. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what have I been contemplating regularly? Does this strengthen or weaken me? Does it bring me closer to the person I want to become, or disconnect me from who I truly am? Asked sincerely, these questions can trigger a profound internal shift, because a mind that is respected blooms, but a mind exposed to constant excess gets sick. You don't need to escape the world. You just need to learn to filter what deserves a place inside you. And the rule is simple. What disturbs you more than it teaches and doesn't deserve your time? What provokes more craving than peace doesn't deserve your gaze? What feeds noise instead of inner silence doesn't deserve space in your day? Your soul is becoming something, right now. The question is, what are you allowing it to behold? Deep down, the human mind isn't craving to know everything, it's craving to rest. But in an era of information overload, of loud voices, of absolute truths, you've been convinced that you need to accumulate more data, more answers, more theories, more certainty. And the more you accumulate, the more lost you feel, not from a lack of content, but from a lack of silence. An intoxicated mind is not an ignorant mind. It's a saturated one, saturated with possibilities, doubts, and conflicting paths. It's the paradox of knowledge without peace. You know so much, and yet still feel like you know nothing, because knowledge without clarity doesn't illuminate, it confuses, and knowledge without direction doesn't guide, it disorients. Perseus of Citium once wrote, "Wisdom is not in knowing much, but in knowing what is necessary." And that distinction is exactly what's missing in times of excess, because what sets you free isn't knowing everything, it's discerning what deserves space inside of you. True wisdom is selective. It doesn't accumulate, it refines. It doesn't showcase, and it dissolves what is unnecessary. Have you noticed how the lightest moments of your life weren't filled with explanations, but with presence? How certain simple conversations marked you more deeply than complex theories? How a sunset or a shared silence healed what no argument could ever reach? That's because your mind, like a lake, only reflects clearly when it is still. The buildup of thoughts, no matter how intelligent they may seem, stirs the waters. And where there is constant agitation, there is no vision, only distortion. That's why detoxing your mind is not about filling it with more knowledge, but about emptying it of what no longer serves you. It's having the courage to let go of old opinions, to question inherited certainties, to accept that in many moments, not knowing is what brings you closer to true understanding. Clarity is born of reduction of noise, of stimulus, of the pressure to understand everything. When you stop trying to explain the entire world, you begin to feel the world around you. And this feeling is a kind of knowing that no book can teach. It can only be accessed through silence. Free yourself from the pressure to always be informed, always be right, always be ready. Learn to rest in the humility of someone who admits, I don't know this, I haven't understood it yet. And that's okay, because the true wise person isn't the one who has all the answers, but the one who makes space to listen. Let your mind breathe, give it margins. Let it refuse to be a container for everything. Lightness doesn't come from a full mind, but from a well-tended one, a mind that filters, that prioritizes, that silences. And at the end of this journey, the invitation is simple. Stop trying to take on everything. Choose what is essential, and trust that within the simplicity of full attention lies a wisdom no encyclopedia could ever offer. A clear mind isn't the one that knows more, it's the one that carries less. And ironically, it's that lighter mind that brings life back to you with more depth. Because now at last there's space to feel it as it truly is. No exaggeration, no noise, just enough. And when the enough is real, it's always more than plenty. Do you feel like you're always chasing something that never arrives? As if life is always one step ahead, and no matter how fast you run, you can never catch up? There's a restlessness that follows you. It doesn't shout, but it whispers constantly. You're late. It's as if an invisible countdown is always ticking, demanding that you solve everything, understand everything, achieve everything. Now, that silent urgency is one of the greatest sources of modern suffering. You wake up already feeling the weight of the day before even getting out of bed. You drink your coffee in a rush. You answer messages mechanically. Commitments pile up, and you barely breathe. But your body obeys, and your intoxicated mind pretends it's in control, when in truth it's being dragged by a tide of expectations that were never really yours. And here we return to a lesson from Zeno of Citium, delivered with a clarity that survives centuries. Time heals what reason cannot. A short phrase, but loaded with depth, because there are pains, confusions, and fatigues that cannot be resolved with logic or with urgency. They can only be dissolved with time. That silent master you're always trying to rush, not realizing you're trying to pick fruit that is still green. An agitated mind is an impatient mind. It craves instant answers, clear paths, guarantees. But life doesn't offer those. Life offers processes, stages, pauses. And those spaces which feel empty are often the ones you most need to learn to occupy. Hurry is the poison of the mind because it pulls you out of the present and launches you into an imaginary future, a future filled with pressure. You should be there already. You haven't figured this out yet? Everyone else is ahead of you. And even if these phrases are never said aloud, they repeat inside your mind like a toxic mantra, exhausting you before the day even begins. But what if you started to slow down? Not to do less, but to do things with presence, to step out of autopilot and into awareness, to realize that you don't need to be rushing all the time, that there's immense value in walking slowly, in observing the journey, in allowing answers to arrive in their own time. There is wisdom in the not yet. There is beauty in being in the middle of the process, but hurry won't let you see it. It blinds you to everything that doesn't have an immediate result. And so you live running, but never arriving, doing, but never feeling fulfilled, thinking, but never finding peace. Restless desire is the engine of dissatisfaction. Mental detox requires a reconciliation with time, understanding that it is not your enemy, but your ally. That time doesn't demand speed. It asks for trust. And trust only arises when you learn to stay with what is already here, now, without demanding it become something else too soon. Start with small gestures. Breathe before responding. Pause a few seconds between one thought and the next. Walk without looking at your phone. Leave blank spaces in your schedule, not to fill later but simply to be. Those pauses aren't a waste of time. They're the fertile soil of presence. The mind needs pauses to breathe. Margins. Silence. Because when everything is full, everything becomes excess, and excess sickens. But when there is space, time flows in. And when time flows in, healing begins. You don't need to arrive first, you only need to arrive whole. And for that, you must respect life's natural rhythm, that flow you cannot control, but can accompany with serenity, with acceptance, with a wisdom that only reveals itself to those who dare to slow down. Because in the end, the real urgency isn't doing everything fast. It's to stop rushing through what can only be lived with presence. Have you ever noticed how even after achieving something, the feeling of emptiness quickly returns? As if every goal reached came with a new void attached. First, you want the job. Then, you want recognition. Then, a raise. Then, stability. More time. More freedom. And yet, something still feels missing. The cycle of, when I have this, then I'll be happy, never ends. It's like trying to quench your thirst with salt water. Diogenes of Sinope said it bluntly. Nothing is enough for the person to whom enough is too little. He understood more than most that the human mind, when it isn't taught how to pause, turns every achievement into a starting point for the next desire. And that is exhausting. It's addictive. It's self-destructive. We live in a society that feeds this restlessness as if it were a virtue. You're told you need to be ambitious, that stopping means failing, that slowing down is becoming irrelevant. But there's a big difference between growing with purpose and running without direction. The intoxicated mind can't tell the difference. It just wants more things, more status, more to prove, more to show. This endless desire is the fuel for an anxiety that never rests. It's like constantly chasing a horizon that moves farther away with every step forward. You spend your energy, your time, your mental health, and when you stop, you realize you haven't really gone anywhere. Dissatisfaction doesn't come from lack. It comes from excess expectations, excess comparisons, excess meaningless goals. It grows every time you believe your life needs to look like someone else's, every time you measure yourself by standards that were never truly yours, every time you forget to look at what you already have, because you're too busy chasing what you haven't reached yet. And how do you detox from this? By relearning how to feel satisfied, not passively, not with resignation, but with active gratitude, with presence, with awareness of all that already lives within you. Life is not small. What's small is the space you give to what you already possess. Try this. Pause, look around, take a deep breath, and ask sincerely, among all I have right now, would this already be enough if I knew how to value it? That question can open inner doors no external achievement ever could. Practice sufficiency as an act of resistance. Refuse excess. Question every desire. Embrace simplicity. Rediscover joy in small things. A warm cup of coffee enjoyed slowly. A day without pressure. A conversation without rush. A silence that is whole. Restless desire will always whisper that something is missing. But the serene soul will know how to answer. Nothing is missing. I just hadn't noticed it yet. Because when you learn to see enough in what you have, abundance stops being a distant promise and becomes a present state of being. And then something shifts. The mind calms. The heart slows. Life begins to make sense from the inside out. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've stopped searching outside for what has always lived within. In the end, it's not about having less or wanting little. It's about wanting with awareness. It's about knowing when to stop. It's about realizing that maybe, just maybe, the peace you've been seeking is already in what you have, and always was. Have you ever realized how much of your life is spent trying to control the uncontrollable? You plan every detail. You anticipate every risk. You try to predict what others will think, feel, or do. And despite all your efforts, something always slips away. Someone changes their mind. An opportunity doesn't come. The response never arrives. And your anxiety grows. Not because something went wrong, but because you believed it was your responsibility to hold on to things that were never in your hands to begin with. Panaetius of Rhodes gave us a key to freedom when he stated, "What does not depend on us is irrelevant to our happiness." This doesn't mean becoming cold, emotionally indifferent, or passively resigned. It means clarity, knowing exactly where your reach ends and where life begins, with all its uncontrollable, independent movements. An intoxicated mind is one that tries to control everything. It confuses effort with guarantee. It believes that if it tries harder, thinks more, insists longer, it will avoid pain, mistakes, or surprises. But that's like trying to hold the wind in your hands. It wears you out. It frustrates you, and it disconnects you from what can actually be done. Letting go of what doesn't depend on you is an act of courage. It's accepting that some situations have no immediate solution, that some people won't understand you, that some chapters won't close the way you hoped. And even so, that doesn't have to trap you. How many times have you blamed yourself for things beyond your control? How many nights have you lost trying to explain someone else's actions? That's the root of much mental exhaustion. And the antidote begins with a simple question. Is this truly in my hands? If the answer is no, then letting go is not giving up. It's setting yourself free. It's taking a weight off your mind that was never yours to carry. It's redirecting your energy toward what can be transformed. Your attitude, your choices, your interpretation. That's what belongs to you. There is a silent peace in accepting the flow of life, in realizing that you're not responsible for everything, and that you don't have to be. There is wisdom in preparing, but also in allowing. There is value in trying, but also in letting go. Absolute control is an illusion fed by fear. Stoicism teaches the opposite, that true strength lies in lucid acceptance, not as resignation, but as focus. Because when you release what doesn't depend on you, you make space for what does, for what can grow, for what truly nourishes you. You don't need to carry everything, you don't need to predict everything, you don't need to save everyone. Your freedom begins the moment you calmly say, "This doesn't belong to me," and move forward, light, present, whole. In the end, it's simple. If it's not in your hands and it shouldn't live in your mind, let go and see what remains. That, yes, that's yours. Have you ever felt that urgency to respond immediately when someone provokes you? That almost uncontrollable urge to justify every decision, to explain your emotions, to prove that you're right? Most of us grew up believing that reacting is a sign of strength, that responding on the spot shows intelligence or power, but it doesn't. In fact, many times it's quite the opposite. Reacting without thinking is giving up your center. It's handing over the reins of your being to someone who might not even deserve that space. True strength lives in the pause, in the space between stimulus and response. That's where self-mastery is born, that quiet, almost invisible quality that the Stoics considered one of the highest virtues. And Heracles put it simply, no one is free who is not master of themselves. This sentence carries a serene weight, almost like an ancient truth, because if you don't control your reactions, someone or something else will, and that is not freedom. We often confuse self-mastery with repression. We think that staying quiet means being weak, that not responding means we're backing down. But there's a huge difference between repressing and restraining. Repression is erasing yourself. Restraint is existing with more intensity, but under your own command. Think of how many times you've said something you didn't mean just because you were angry, and how many decisions you've made in the heat of emotion that left consequences long after that feeling was gone. Now think, how many of those moments could have been different if you had taken a deep breath before acting? One deep breath can save a relationship. One conscious silence can prevent disaster. Self-mastery isn't just helpful, it's liberating. When you learn not to react to everything, you realize how much energy you were wasting on small things. You stop living in constant alert mode and start dwelling in your own calm. You understand that you don't need to win arguments to have peace, that you don't need to explain yourself to feel whole, that not every criticism deserves a response, that not every external urgency is an internal emergency. Mental detox necessarily passes through the silence of automatic reactions, through the decision to be less predictable, less impulsive, less reactive, and more present, more lucid, more self-led. Practice delayed responses. When you feel like exploding, wait. When the criticism comes, breathe. When the impulse rises, remember, you are not your first thought. You are the one who decides what to do with it. This takes practice, because the modern world values speed, immediate answers, constant intensity. But what truly builds, what truly sustains, what truly heals, comes from depth, and depth only exists where there's pause. So what if self-mastery is actually the highest form of freedom? The freedom of not being swept away by emotional tides, of not being lost in what others do or say. The freedom to act out of choice, not out of reflex, because in the end, anyone who cannot hold themselves will always be held by someone or something else, and that, by no means, is being free.